Norman Roule joins us now from Washington. He served in the office of the Director of National Intelligence as a manager for Iran and spent 34 years in the CIA. Norman, we know the Strait of Hormuz is a major choke point for oil transportation out of the Middle East. How do you think that this accessibility of crude oil could impact the president's plans in dealing with the Iranian conflict?
Good afternoon. It's an excellent question. The Iranian game plan is a relatively simple one. Their goal is to disturb and jar global energy markets through a series of attacks which remain below the level of violence which would provoke a conventional war, but will sufficiently upset energy markets to cause price spikes throughout the world. The price spikes would then, in the Iranian plan, compel these countries to pressure the United States to reduce sanctions actions against Iran itself. This is imperative for Iran because the sanctions applied by the United States against Iran are going to be inevitably extremely damaging to the regime's stability.
So, Norman, upsetting the energy markets, how realistic of an option do you think that is for Iran?
It's realistic for short-term spikes. You will see something like a 4%, 6% spike in oil prices whenever such attacks occur. Generally, the other aspects of the oil market, production in locations such as Iraq, Venezuela, Nigeria, and economic demands will impact the overall price stability. But these short spikes do cost countries a lot of money whenever they occur.
So the president says he plans on increasing sanctions on Iran. What could the economic pressure on this country do for them? Do you think that could give the U.S. some leverage, or will it make it worse?
Sanctions are, in the way I describe it, is sanctions are like money problems in a bad relationship. It's not the money problems themselves that cause a relationship to collapse. It's the other issues that are associated with the relationship. Iran is now facing an unprecedented series of simultaneous ecological, economic, political, and social crises for which it has no policy solution. These sanctions over the long term will have a significant impact in accelerating the unrest or the instability within the regime. I should stress that sanctions are a long-term tool. The sanctions that brought Iran to the table for the nuclear deal were in place for 7 years.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We know that Iran has also threatened to firmly confront U.S. aggression. Besides sort of leveraging or targeting the oil markets, what other actions could Iran take?
Well, just to comment on your point, the United States has not shown any military aggression to Iran. The locations for the flights of the drone have been used for many years by the United States, as well as other international powers in the area. This was an unprovoked attack on a U.S. Military asset, which is quite a challenge. For the Iranians, cyber tools remain a powerful a weapon against the West, and we have seen over the last 2 years an increase, to include a spike in recent months, of cyber actions against Gulf parties, where there are a number of U.S. and Western businesses, as well as the United States. Iran has also increased the number of weapons, missile firings, and armed drone launches from Yemen. What your viewers should understand is when Iran is firing a missile from Yemen via the Houthis or with the Houthis into Saudi Arabia, that missile does not turn left or right over the heads of Americans or Europeans. Those missile attacks and drone attacks are attacks against the multiple nations who have nationals in Saudi Arabia, again, as a means of pressuring these countries to accept Iran's view of the situation.
We've also learned that some countries are deciding not to fly over Iranian airspace. It's already affecting air travel at this point, especially as we head into the summer months. What are you watching for, Norman, in the coming weeks? And do you think that there could be some sort of diplomatic solution, or has that bridge already been burned?
Well, it's reasonable that these airlines are doing this. You're also going to see some shipping firms take similar actions. Insurance costs for airlines and for shipping firms have spiked in recent days. That's predictable. Again, that's also part of the Iranian game plan of imposing economic costs on the many players involved in the region in hopes that they will squeeze the United States. Diplomacy is tough. The United States has followed a rather traditional path, despite the rhetoric that comes from the White House, the United States has engaged the Russians, the European Union, Asian and Arab partners in a rather intensive diplomatic campaign. But Iran has in essence said, we're not leaving the region. We're not going to stop supporting terrorist groups. We're not going to constrain our nuclear program any farther, and we're not going to constrain our missile program. I don't think Iran is ready to negotiate. I think there are no strategic drivers yet for Iran to negotiate. What would bring Iran to the negotiating table is multilateral economic and diplomatic pressure. Right now, Iran sees that it can continue to drive wedges between the United States and its partners, and frankly, wedges within the United States itself. There are so many different voices that speak against the president or for the president. A simple Iranian action in the Gulf can just accelerate this process.
Norman Roule, grateful you can join us with your analysis. Thank you very much.